So yeah, I just really wanted to round up this week or this few days, Breastfeeding Busted, with a Q&A, and I've got loads of questions, so I will get started on them as soon, like now, basically. But I've got the Facebook group in front of me, so if you have any questions, let me know. There's a slight delay on the between me recording on Zoom, so I can send it out to people, and on the actual Facebook stuff. So just apologies for that if you're trying to say something and you're waiting for a response. So I have tried to kind of group together the questions and put them in some kind of order. Just some really good questions, and I know when you haven't breastfed before, there's just so much you don't know, obviously, and I can't possibly over these sessions prepare you for breastfeeding alone. So I really recommend, I'll talk about this a bit at the end, but I really recommend you do an antenatal class, whether that's something locally. It's worth going and asking your local children's centre, and if there's nothing face-to-face that you can find, then please come and do my online course. I'd absolutely love to have you guys do it, and I will be sharing more about that at the end. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to cover is somebody asked, and sorry, I'm not going to remember names, I haven't written them all down, so my apologies for that. Also, I'm just like terrible with names. How long to breastfeed for? How long do most women breastfeed for? And that's a really, really interesting question, because I know that you said, just grab your name, honestly, so embarrassing, sorry. Oh, and I've got no internet here. One second. Okay, I'm just going to have to, sorry about that. My internet's not good enough up here. So basically, it's a really interesting question. It really varies around the world about length of time people breastfeed for. So let's start with the World Health Organization and UNICEF, Association for Pediatric, and the NHS guidelines, which is that babies should be fed breast milk exclusively for the first 6 months with nothing else in their diet, and then continue to be breastfed for at least 2 years and beyond. So those are the official guidelines for breastfeeding, and there's lots of evidence and to back that up, but in reality that isn't what we see, especially in the UK. In the UK here we have the lowest breastfeeding rates in the world, and we know that by 1 year old, only 1 in 200 babies are breastfed. So it's really, really quite low at that point compared to the rest of the world. And there are other countries with low rates as well, but ours is particularly low. And what we know is that many women stop breastfeeding around the 3 to 6 week mark. And so we know that's a particularly tricky time for families. And research also shows us that lots of those women, a high percent of those women, gave up breastfeeding before they were ready to, before they wanted to, and that can be really difficult for them. So I think it's really important when we talk about breastfeeding support, breastfeeding information, that we're especially focusing on that really early time, those first 2 months really of breastfeeding, or at least the first 3 months of breastfeeding support, because that's when people most need it, and that's that sort of 3 to 6 week period is when mothers really, really struggle. So there you go. I just say, just take it one day at a time. Just start breastfeeding, see how you go. Start with take it one feed at a time even. You know, say I'm going to give my baby colostrum, then I'm going to see how I get on. Just small steps, see how you get on. Sometimes if we have really big goals and it feels, and then we're struggling, you start to think, oh my gosh, this is feeling so hard today. How am I going to get to 6 months? Or how am I even going to get to 6 weeks? And so I think it's important to remember that breastfeeding kind of happens in stages, and certainly the very beginning part of breastfeeding is quite challenging, because you're on a steep learning curve. We talked about that a bit in day one, and it's all very new and it feels complicated. And also babies feed a lot. And as they get older, it generally becomes easier for most people. Babies start to feed less. You've kind of got this. You've both learned. You do it a lot more without thinking. It becomes a very automatic thing. So that's something worth bearing in mind. So I definitely think take it one feed or one day at a time, and just see how you go, see how you feel. I know a lot of people who are sort of feeding toddlers and beyond will nearly always say this isn't what I imagined, but this is what's happened for us, and this is what's worked for us, and this is what we're still doing, and that's absolutely fine. So it's very much your journey, and I don't want you to get too hung up on shoulds and yeah, what other people do. It's very much your relationship with your baby or babies, and it's individual to you, and it's actually no one else's business either. And then the other thing I want to talk about was a bit about the fourth trimester, about those first 3 months, because they can be particularly challenging, and that's because we have quite high expectations of our babies, especially in the UK, and we actually like to call this first period the fourth trimester, and there's lots of kind of theories behind why babies are, you know, we should almost treat them like they're sort of still in the womb in this first 3 months. Sorry about the bouncing on camera, it's because I'm sat on my bed, and every time I move, the computer goes up and down. And if you just think right now about the baby in your tummy, so just close your eyes for a minute and just really put your hands in your bump and just really think about what your baby's experiencing now. So, you know, they're warm, they're being held quite tightly, they can hear your heartbeat, they can hear the whooshing sides of your tummy, your breathing, your amniotic fluid tastes it tastes of the flavors you're eating, so, and it sort of tastes a bit like your family smell, and we know that there's a connection between amniotic fluid and taste of colostrum breast milk. So it's a really familiar space for your baby. They've been there a long time. So when they come out of the womb, we want to spend the next 3 months really trying to recreate that as closely as we can, because that's what they're wanting. So when babies don't want to be put down, when they don't want to be in a Moses basket on their own, or they don't want to be in the car seat or whatever, that's because that's not what they know, you know, that's not what they're used to. So we've got to really sort of think about it from their point of view and think, yeah, of course they want to be held close and cuddled, and that may feel quite difficult, but the more that we can respond to them, particularly in the first 3 months, but certainly for the first year of life and then onwards as well, that we know that really helps with brain development, it really helps with babies feeling connected, it really helps with that bonding experience for both of you. So that fourth trimester, go and have a little look at some stuff about fourth trimester. We'll talk about it quite a bit on the and on the breastfeeding course as well. Next, I was going to talk about getting enough. And again, this is a really big subject, and it's one of the biggest things that mums worry about, and it's one of the biggest reasons that they give up, because mums start feeling they don't have enough milk. Typically around the 3 week mark. And what happens at the 3 week mark is babies will have a bit of a growth spurt. They start to feed more often. Now, growth spurt is a funny name in breastfeeding for when babies feed more often to try and up your milk to the next level. Milk works on a demand and supply, so the baby demands the milk, and then your breasts supply the amount of milk that's been removed. Eventually, it doesn't start off like that, it's hormonal driven to start with, but that changes to that, and you need to feed frequently to be able to give your body the right messages to release the milk, to make the milk, sorry. So it's important that you understand that one day is not going to look like the next day. And I think I said on day one that actually babies aren't robots. They are hungry one day, not so hungry the next day. Just like us humans, one day they're going to sleep a little bit more, the next day they're not, especially in the early days. So, you know, just really following your baby's lead is the best thing that you can do. And we look at nappies, and we look at how your baby's behaving to know if they're getting enough. So we're looking for poo changing from a sticky meconium to a kind of yellowy poo, and we're looking for wet nappies becoming more frequent, and lots of them. And then obviously your health professional will be weighing your baby as well to give you an idea of how much they're getting. And a good breastfeeding course will go over all that with you in detail, so that you've got that information, so that you feel really confident about knowing if your baby's getting enough milk. They need to feed around between 8 and 12 times in 24 hours for the first 3 months, which sounds like a lot. And it is quite a lot. Well, it isn't a lot, that's normal, but that's sometimes, sorry, what I was going to say is sometimes they're feeding more than that. It might feel like more than that. And they'll have longer gaps as well. And to start with, often those longer gaps are in the day. And obviously, gradually, gently, you want to encourage them to have those longer gaps at night. But to start with, when babies come out of the womb, they have got no concept of day and night. As I'm sure those of you who are later on in your pregnancy, you're probably aware that when you lie down and when you're restful in the evenings, your baby becomes more active, you know. someone mentioned sensitive nipples, and actually I'm going to come on to that in a minute. So also, yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about, actually we'll talk about sensitive nipples, sorry. So somebody said they've breastfed before and they had problems with their nipples being quite sensitive. And I wouldn't say this is a common problem, but it does happen, and everybody's nipples have different, so I'm just checking for comments. So also, hang on, I knew that would happen. I'd start hearing myself. Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about, okay, so yeah, everybody's nipples are different sensitivities when you're pregnant, when you're breastfeeding, when in normal life, and it really is so individual, and there's not a huge amount you can do about it. I mean, one thing you might find helpful, especially with bras and pads, is to have something warm down there if it's really something that's really bothering you. So just some warm pads or something can just kind of, because sometimes very sensitive nipples can be to do with something called vasospasm. So like if you get your nipples going a bit white, sometimes a bit of warmth there can help them warm up. But it may just be that it's just you. For lots of people, it's something that gets worse when they're in a certain bit of the cycle. So when you're feeding an older one, when your periods return, some people feel it can be worse with their periods. The other thing to say, which I think is really important, and it's useful for you guys who are kind of into hypnobirthing, things to say that the more you can do sort of relaxation techniques, and keep up that practice and keep doing those relaxations once your baby arrives, not talking about doing mega long ones, but just some short ones, and using breathing techniques, the better we are able to cope, the less sensitive we are to pain and discomfort. So that's definitely something worth bearing in mind. But I know this is your second baby, so maybe a struggle to do that, but we talk about that a bit on the course. Someone asked me to talk about colic, and I'm just going to see if there's anything else. Oh, colostrum harvesting. Oh, I covered colostrum harvesting in day 1, Emma, actually. So it might be better if you go and have a little look at that. Yeah, it's on the day 1 video. So colic and reflux, and this kind of fits in with diet because I've had 2 questions on this. So just touching briefly on colic. Colic is a name, and reflux are both a name. Reflux is more of an official diagnosis, but actually all those terms mean is it's a collection of symptoms that have been given one name. Symptoms that seem to do with your digestive tract, but they've been given one name for babies being unsettled, for doing lots of crying, seeming like they're in discomfort, and yeah, generally uncomfortable, and it can be really miserable, and lots of babies will start getting it sort of around the 3-week mark and just feeling a lot more crying in the evenings, and it can be really hard work. And reflux tends to be not so much evenings, but reflux tends to be babies feeling uncomfortable when they're lying down, needing to be sort of jiggled and held all the time. With both of these things, it's really worth trying to find out what the source of your baby's issues are, rather than starting on medications, etc. Obviously, I would always recommend going to your GP and chatting to them if you're worried, but it's definitely, unfortunately in modern medicine, they don't necessarily spend time looking at the cause of something, they just cover up the symptoms. Everybody seems to have a bottle of Infocol in their bag. Let me tell you something about Infocol, and that is that Infocol's own research that they paid for themselves and have published on their website, so you're very welcome to go and have a look, show that Infocol makes no difference to babies. Their very own research, and yet it's so well marketed and even recommended by health professionals that pretty much I'd say every mum in the UK has a bottle of Infocol in her bag. So just think a little bit about, and I think with Infocol, some women swear by it and say it really helps their babies, and obviously that's fine, but if you're giving anything new into the system other than breast milk, you've got to remember that it could have a side effect. And that's certainly true on lots of the reflux medications and the other medications as well for Infocol. So just be a little bit thoughtful on that. Sometimes babies are unsettled and they've got teeny tiny intestines, and they're just really getting used to that feeling of digesting what they're eating, and babies want to be held and jiggled anyway, but it's heartbreaking when they're crying and they're upset. And yeah, really there's lots of different things that you could look at to see if it's affecting them. One of those things is diet, and again, somebody else asked about diet. Now, generally, there is nothing specific that you should or shouldn't eat when you're pregnant. Sorry, when you're breastfeeding. Breast milk is made from your blood. So it's not like whatever goes straight into your stomach goes straight into your breast milk. It doesn't work like that. It goes through your blood system, and your breast body takes out what it needs for the breast milk and then builds breast milk out of your blood. So it's a live cellular product, from not made from your food but made from your blood. So generally, no matter how malnourished you are, I mean, you have to be very, very malnourished, and they know this by studying people in refugee camps and other malnourished communities. They know that your body, just like in pregnancy where your body prioritizes your unborn child and depletes you, it's exactly the same with breastfeeding. If you're not eating well, it's actually going to affect you more than it's going to affect the baby. It's going to make you feel worn out because you're depleted, but actually your breast milk is going to be pretty good. So we don't need to get hung up on eating well. You know, there's no point breastfeeding unless I eat well and things like that. It's just absolute rubbish. Your body prioritizes your breast milk for your baby over yourself. By all means, eat well, absolutely. Of course, it's best for health if we are eating a good quality diet. It's really good for us. It's good for our immune system. It's good for all those things. But don't worry too much about having this perfect diet, because there's very little evidence that it changes your milk whatsoever. Having said that, if there are allergens, things that your baby is intolerant to, that could come through your milk and your blood system. And if you've got a baby who's very, very unsettled, it may be that you want to just try some elimination of some obvious things. The most obvious one is cow's milk protein, and that's something you may want to consider. But I just, just see how you go. I wouldn't be doing that off the bat, because, to be honest, once you have got a baby, and certainly if you've got two, you want to make your life as straightforward and simple as you can. So I hope that's helpful. Finally, well, not finally, because I'm going to come on to one of Emma's questions, but actually, I'm just going to see if there's any more. No, that's it. Okay, expressing. So somebody asked about expressing. How do we know how to store it and everything? So the first thing I want to say about expressing, and I did touch on this on day one, which is that you don't need to go out and buy a whole load of kit when you're pregnant. Actually, I would recommend you wait, because there's so many different breast pumps and different products, and you need to kind of match the product you buy to your situation. So again, go back and watch day one on this if you want to. But if, for example, you do have a low supply, if you're struggling in the beginning, which some people do for lots of different reasons, if you've had a complicated birth, if you've been separated from your baby at all, if you're feeling particularly stressed out, or stressed out when you've had a baby, but there's lots of, if that's your situation, you're wanting to increase your breast milk supply because you've been told that it's low, then you're probably going to want to hire a hospital grade breast pump if you're going to be doing lots of breast pumping, because that's going to be the best thing to do. But if you're going back to work, you're going to want something really portable, perhaps that's battery powered, that's really discreet, and I wouldn't really get into that until you're close to going back to work. Certainly if you're going back to work after 6 months, or certainly 9 months plus, and a year, absolutely, you do not need to be necessarily worrying about expressing, because by that time your baby's going to be feeding very little, and actually a lot of babies will feed mostly in the evenings and at night when you go out to work. I'm not going to get into that. That probably seems like a million miles away to you all now, but yeah, really just kind of wait with that rather than spending lots and lots of money. And then also there's a really cheap, great silicone pump for people who just want to express a little bit of milk for the odd occasion, and they're called Hacker and Nature Bonds, and they are about £10, and they are perfectly adequate for most people. You don't need to spend an absolute fortune on all this kind of kit. Definitely try and learn to hand express. It is free. It's really useful for if you get engorged after your baby's born, or if you have any plugged ducts. Again, haven't got time to go over all that today, but I'm definitely on the online course. I go into lots of different breastfeeding problems that can occur and what you do about them, and also the breastfeeding friendly solutions to those, importantly, to those problems. Hand expressing is a great thing to learn to do. Just getting used to the feel of your breasts, and knowing when everything's okay and when things don't quite feel right can be invaluable, and hand expressing can be so useful. I remember with my first for my 30th, I wanted to go, we went to the theatre, and I dropped him off with some family members and with some express milk, and then we got to the theatre and I hadn't taken a pump or anything, and when it was time for his feed, I just started to feel so uncomfortable, and we hadn't even been out that long, but he was only 3 months old, so it was quite early to go out, to be honest, without him. And I couldn't concentrate on the play after that at all. All I could think about was feeding him, and I really wished at that point that I had learned to hand express, so I could have gone on hand express in the loo a bit and then just had a bit of time to enjoy it. But needless to say, I just had to get home and feed him. So yeah, great skill if you can practice it in pregnancy. Absolutely perfect. And that's what they were asking about. They were asking about storage. So storage guidelines are really different from every country and every kind of every charity. All the different things you see are going to be different, because I don't know why, they're just, the guidelines are not standard across the world. So this is what I say, because it's really easy to remember. Breast milk can be kept for 6 hours out at room temperature, not on a hot day obviously, but like standard room temperature. It can be kept 6 days in the fridge, and it can be kept 6 months in the freezer. So that's a really quick, easy way to remember. Breast milk eats bacteria. It doesn't really grow bacteria very easily, which is why the guidelines are quite lenient. If you have expressed the milk and you know that it's going to be not given soon, but the quicker we put it in the freezer, the better. If you think you're going to be using it in the next few days, keep it in the fridge, because actually freezing it does change the components slightly, and it does kill off a few of the benefits. I mean, it freezes it obviously, so that some of the living cells aren't going to carry on being okay, but it's still a fantastic thing and perfectly acceptable thing to give your baby. But fresh is best, which makes complete sense, doesn't it, with any kind of fresh food. I'm just going to read through these comments a bit. So Emma, colostrum harvesting I talked about in day 1. Okay, top tips for breastfeeding a baby with 18-month-old in tow. Okay, cool. I've been here, I've been there. So I can definitely, not 18 months, I had a 20-month gap between my boys, and no family around, although my mum did used to come and visit, but she wasn't local, so I didn't have that kind of help. I did fortunately have lots of good friends, and we very much kept going to the toddler groups and things. And you just have to just get comfortable with breastfeeding anywhere, and being okay with that. And the other thing I'd say is make up like a little pack, so a bag, a box, special things, age appropriate things with some special books, maybe some like little flat books that you can do together. At the time, I mean, my kids are like 10 and 11 now, so it was a while ago, but then we had these aqua draw things, and they had the aqua draw in. But now Crayola do these amazing colouring books that have pens, but the pens, they're different colours, but they only colour on the pages. I quite often buy them for breastfeeding mums when I go and visit them if they've got older ones. So just, that's a perfect sort of thing to put in, or for your little ones into puzzles or something that's going to keep them really busy, but that is just for when you're breastfeeding. Call it the boob box or the feeding box or whatever, and just get it out at those times. And it's something for them to look forward to, something for them to do. I mean, to be honest, there wasn't iPads around or smartphones when my two eldest were little and I had that small gap. Probably now I'll just use an iPad and perhaps have a special app that's for little ones. Depends how you feel about that kind of stuff. Certainly the TV was on a lot more than I had ever had been before, than I'd ever hoped. And also my mum bought my eldest like a little play kitchen, which she didn't have before, and it was like in the living room where I used to feed. So it was just like, we just made him feel really special, really loved, because he had no clue what was going on. His whole world was turned upside down, and we just had a few little things that were there for when I was breastfeeding, and it was okay. But like I say, the TV was on a lot more than we ever had hoped, but that was just, we just had to kind of, that's what we did to get through it. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. Hopefully it is. Sarah is asking, oh yeah, I have covered wind and colic, it's so hard. Oh, she's tongue-tied. Yeah, so earlier on, for those of you who are still watching, I was talking about it's really useful with colic and reflux, which are just names for symptoms. They're not actual diagnoses as such. They're not diseases, I should say. It is a diagnosis but not a disease. it's really useful to find the cause. And actually tongue tie, Sarah, is definitely a cause of taking in air. When babies are just tip this down slightly. When babies are not latching on well because their tongue is tied, so they're not able to get an open wide gate, if they're clicking, if they haven't got a good seal around the breast with their mouth, then they're taking in air, and it can be really difficult thing to sort out. You're having it snipped, which is great. Sarah, do you want to just let me know, do you know about the flipple technique? Is that something you've looked up or had some support, and what breastfeeding support have you had? Do you want to just let me know? I know there's a slight delay here. You said in the evening she's on and off the boob and fussy, and is that normal? Yeah, it's completely normal. Yeah. Okay, I'll explain that again in a minute. So yeah, your tongue tie snip is probably going to help. Just don't expect it to be a magic overnight thing. Often women feel an improvement with the latch, because usually you'll be latching on after the procedure. Hopefully, if you've got a good practitioner you're going to, they'll support you with a breastfeed afterwards. And often what happens is that feels really good and you're like, oh, this is amazing, this feels better. But then you get home and things are a little bit difficult. So my best tips for kind of that for post tongue tie, sorry, we're going a little bit off topic here, but it's fine, I really want to help, is to keep your next 2 days completely quiet and just plan skin to skin in bed for 2 days, and don't have anything else going on, don't have any visitors or guests, just skin to skin and breastfeeding as much as you possibly can. And then yeah, and now just sort of get used to you haven't mentioned the flipple technique. And if you've got some local breastfeeding support, ask for somebody to give you a little bit of extra help with that, because the more you can practice the flipple and the deep latching techniques now, because that's something you're going to have to carry on after tongue tie has been done as well, and the quicker it's going to get better. You haven't said how old your baby is, so and then just while I'm waiting for you to answer that, I'm just going to talk about evening. So what happens with breast milk production is your breast milk production mostly happens at night. And again, on the online course, we talk about this, the evolutionary background to this quite a lot. But it's mainly made at night by it's your hormone called prolactin that's higher then, and that's when you have all your breast milk made. Not all of it, but most of it is more abundant at that time. And then over the over the day, so you wake up and you've got quite abundant supply, and over the day the actual volume of milk decreases. What's happening as the day goes on is your milk is becoming fattier, stickier, harder for the baby to remove from the breast, and that means that in the sort of evenings they're feeding really frequently, and it kind of feels like they're not filling up, but they kind of need to do that too. It's called cluster feeding, and it's really, really normal. They need to do that because they want to get that sort of fattier milk. If you've got a baby with a tongue tie and they're slipping off and it's difficult to get them on, it can be really, really challenging these times, because because it's all a bit of a struggle, and if they're not got a good latch, then it can slip off really easily. And what your baby's probably trying to do is not wanting more, but just struggling to stay on and be settled at that time. But yeah, it's really common to have the evenings to be a bit tricky, and that is something they completely grow out of. It's something very common for the first few weeks, but again, not every baby does it, but that's why. It's because your supply hasn't dropped, it's just that it's supposed to be like that in the evenings. It's the richer, thicker, fattier milk. Think about it as the milk that's going to help your baby start going for longer stretches at night eventually. That's how I like to think about it. So yeah, Sarah, get your mum to help. Yeah, definitely get all the help in just those days, and just keep it really, really simple, and yeah, really quiet. And the more you can breastfeed, the better for recovering from a tongue tie release. Oh, it's been lovely chatting to you all. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, while you're trying to do some skin to skin. Wonderful. I'm just going to go over something with you guys. So I've spoken a bit about the online course. I'm just going to tell you a bit more about it quickly now, if I can find it. There we go. So, ooh, am I there? Okay, cool. So this is the online course I've mentioned throughout the week, and I just want to let you know that I just want to let you know a little bit about it, and then I've got a bit of an offer for you guys if you would be interested in hearing more from me and learning more about breastfeeding before your baby arrives. And I can really, really recommend it. And as I said, it doesn't have to be my course, it can be your local course. Some midwifery teams do them for free, but I'd really recommend you getting one that really goes over the things I talked about in the first day. All the good sort of things that a good quality course would have. It's got to be realistic. There's no point going to a breastfeeding course that tells you that breastfeeding is just natural and it's all going to be wonderful and you know, crack on, because that's not realistic. A lot of people do struggle with breastfeeding. I think it's really important to understand why and understand how you can like what's normal, what isn't normal, and how you sort of can overcome those challenges and sort of understand just to understand really how it's all gonna look. So I created this with a Calm Birth School hypnobirthing teacher, and it's a 6-session course that you can do with or without your partners. It's got 6 classes. You can do it with anyone. You can do it with any of your family members. You could do it as a whole group if you wanted to, or you can do it on your own. It's online, so you do it in your own time, your own space. You can refer back to it once your baby arrives. So the things about sort of latching and attaching, and I've got lots of video content in it. So it's a video course. It's mostly Ray and I, who's a hypnobirthing teacher, having like, it's quite an informal feel to it. It's supposed to be like having a friend around and explaining everything about breastfeeding to them, but also comprehensive at the same time. So what I'm trying to say is it's not overwhelming. It's friendly feeling. You get lots of information, but it's not heavy. So the sessions are, the first one we talk about is kind of bonding and oxytocin. So a bit like in hypnobirthing, we talk about the hormones and what's happening in your body and how that makes you feel and how that helps breastfeeding to work. And we also talk about that connection between you and your baby. We talk about relaxation and about relaxing and how that's important, so important for breastfeeding as it is for birth. And I share a few relaxation MP3s with you, which are part of the course, so you can go on and carry on using your relaxations, but have them kind of associated with breastfeeding as well as just the birth. We talk about, I've got to remember the things, we talk about establishing milk. So how does breastfeeding actually work? What's going on in your body? How you can know your baby's getting enough? Just really understanding sort of the physiology of that. We talk about how to get a good latch. So there's lots of videos of babies in different positions and mums feeding, and an explanation of how to get that comfortable latch and how to know if things aren't quite right and how to get help with that and how to deal with it. We talk about support, so finding your support network, how you can get the support from your family and get the right support that you need. And we talk about self-care, and we talk about trust. So we talk about sort of connecting with your baby, following your baby's lead, your intuition, and we talk about just confidence as parenting really, and we give you lots of tools for that, including sort of affirmations and a bit of the journaling stuff that we've kind of already done. For you guys tonight, the course is £60, so which is only £10 per session of the course, which is an absolute bargain. If I do say so myself, you just need to use the code BBMarch. Plus I've got some bonuses for the first few of you who sign up. Oh, here we go, sorry, gone too far now. So the first 5 people who sign up with the code BBMarch are gonna get a one-to-one video session with me once your baby arrives, which is half-hour session worth £50. Or if you're particularly anxious about breastfeeding, we could have it before your baby arrives, and then we write a feeding plan for you. We have a chat, I write a feeding plan for you, and then I follow up with you over the next couple of weeks by text and email. So that's for the first 5 people who sign up. And then for the first 10 people who sign up, so those first 5 will get this as well, you get a pack of my mindful breastfeeding affirmation cards. So any of you have been doing hypnobirthing, if we know all about affirmations, and I've got some breastfeeding friendly ones, so that's worth £10. So that's a second little bonus for any of you. So if you are keen and you like the sound of it, if you've really enjoyed what I've had to say the last few days. There's so much more. There really is so much more to learning to breastfeed. And I don't want to make it sound like something that's really difficult, really complicated, but because we live in a world where we just aren't around breastfeeding enough, it is a bit of a learning curve. And we know through research and studies, and also just by all the mums I see that say, I wish I'd known this. That's really what made me write this course and put it together with the kind of mindfulness stuff as well. And that's the link. I know you're not going to be copying that right now, so I'm going to pop that in the comments of the video so that you can go ahead and yeah, sign up if you are keen. And if anyone's got any questions, then I'm still going to be hanging around, I think probably for the next couple of days. Just seen your message, Sarah. No problem, you're very welcome. Let me just stop this, and I'll just give you guys just another minute's chance to see if there's any other questions on here. And thanks for all your for all your contributions this week, guys. It's been really nice being in here, and just for all the comments and questions that have been asked over the last few days. The videos are going to be up for a little bit longer, and I'm going to email them out to everyone who signed up as well. And they won't be here forever, but just for now they'll be around for you to go and look at. Okay, guys, I'm going to go. It's been really nice, and I will see you all in the group if you've got anything else you want to ask me. Okay, bye.